constant 365 days per year nature of mainstream pro wrestling, combined with an audience that demands to see something new, ensures that wrestlers will, from time to time, need to reinvent themselves. This fact was especially true in WCW, a promotion with a stacked roster populated by some of the biggest stars in sports entertainment. In the Turner-owned organization, getting stale was the kiss of death, since there were about 100 other people who desperately wanted that precious TV time. This was the case for everyone on the card, whether a lowly homegrown cruiserweight or a legend from New York. Brother! I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 best WCW wrestler reinventions. Join us! Number 10, Curt Hennig. In his day, Curt Hennig was one of the most dynamic performers in the entire wrestling industry. He was so good that it wasn't a stretch for him to portray Mr. Perfect in WWE, since he could do everything, well, perfectly, usually the first time of asking. During his late 90s run in WCW, however, injuries had well and truly taken their toll, and he needed something else to hang his hat on. His cowboy hat, to be specific, as Hennig reinvented himself as the country music-loving, rap-hating, good old boy leader of the West Texas Rednecks. Hennig, along with fellow Rednecks Bobby Duncombe Jr., Barry and Kendall Windham, and, Virgil for a bit, was clearly having the time of his life playing Johnny Cash in spandex during the Rap is Crap World Tour. Though they were supposed to be the baddies, since WCW predominantly ran in southern markets where country music was king, they became the baby faces, while rappers the No Limit Soldiers were de facto heels. It's a shame that it was so short-lived, because Hennig was very entertaining in the role and there was potential to do a whole lot more with it. Number 9, Dustin Rhodes. Prior to signing with WWE and portraying Goldust, Dustin Rhodes was a plucky young grandson of a plumber, fiery babyface in WCW. His 3+ years under the makeup as the Bizarre One, however, completely changed his career trajectory. The character was so outlandish and memorable that it threatened to typecast Dusty's kid. When he left WWE to go back to WCW in late 1999, it was supposed to be as another weird creation, Seven, but AOL's Standards and Practices department rejected it on the grounds that the hype vignettes made him look like a child abductor. And people say wrestling today is too PC. So he immediately dropped the guise and began wrestling as Dustin Rhodes once again, reinventing himself by going back to the past and becoming the American Nightmare. Dustin was able to have a solid second run in WCW without the need for theatrics. He had some memorable feuds and matches with the likes of Terry Funk and Jeff Jarrett, and when he returned to WWE in early 2002, he was still able to comfortably slip back into the black and gold bodysuits. Number 8, Rey Mysterio. While Rey Mysterio proved that he was infinitely more marketable with the mask on during his WWE career, those big fat royalty checks will attest to that one, his maskless run in WCW wasn't the disaster that many people seem to think it was. While Ray didn't want to lose the mask in the first place, doing so did provide the luchador with the opportunity to reinvent himself. In the wake of showing his face for the first time in his career, Mysterio went on a run as the Giant Killer, fighting and beating much bigger opponents like Kevin Nash, Scott Norton, and Bam Bam Bigelow. The audience responded too, as Ray's popularity increased. Shame WCW's decision makers didn't listen though, of course. After getting the better of the big lads, the master of the 619 became a no-limit soldier and then a filthy animal as he tweaked his wrestling style and experimented with various looks. He also, at this stage, got more promo time and even got to work as a heel for the first and only time in his long and illustrious career. I'm not sold on the devil horns, mind. Number 7, Chronic. 2 Bryans for the price of 1 now, as Clark and Adams ditched their old guises, teamed up and took the WCW Tag Team division by storm. Clark had been wrestling as Wrath and was on quite the roll when he tore his ACL and was forced to spend most of 1999 on the shelf. Adams, meanwhile, wasn't exactly crushing it, wink wink, as a member of NWO's B Team or after when he went solo, taking a hiatus at the back end of 1999 because there was nothing really for him to do. The pair resurfaced as Chronic, the badass hired mercenaries who were happy to beat people up as long as the check cleared. Though WCW was a mess at this point, Chronic were one of the best things in it and really stood out thanks to their look, characters, and strong booking. They weren't the greatest wrestlers in the world or anything, but they worked to their strengths and were good value for their 2 WCW tag team title runs. Plus, their team and finisher name, The High Times, were references to smoking doobies, which is just about the coolest thing a person can possibly do, or so I'm told. Number 6, Randy Savage. Randy Savage was a legend by the time he got to WCW in 1994 and could have rested on his laurels for the duration of his time there, but chose to mix things up and take his character in new and exciting directions instead. He entered WCW from WWE as the loud and colourful macho man that we know and love, but in 1997 he defected to the dark side and turned in the rainbow colours for the black and white of the New World Order. This made Savage hotter than he had been in a while and led him right to the WCW title. Unfortunately, a couple of serious knee injuries put an end to that run, but when he came back the following year, he did so with another new look and attitude. Randy was now sporting a slicked back ponytail, earrings, dark sunglasses, and some dandy new outfits. He'd also put on about 30 pounds of new muscle and had a young lady with him, which soon expanded to a trio of ladies dubbed Team Madness. While this was all utilised as a smokescreen to distract from his declining physical capabilities, it sure worked well and kept Savage at the top of the card. Number 5, Buff Bagwell. For the longest time, Marcus Alexander Bagwell was a fresh-faced, hand-slapping good guy who seemed destined for life as the less interesting half of a tag team. He partnered variously with Tom Zenk, Too Cold Scorpio, The Patriot, and Scotty Riggs, which led to several tag team title runs but no real prolonged period of success. Truth is, Bagwell was a decent wrestler with potential, but he was bland. He was young and talented and had a good physique, but no real character. In a world of Hulk Hogan and Ric Flairs, that just wasn't going to cut it. Defecting to the New World Order did Bagwell's career much good, as he was fully able to embrace his naturally cocky personality. Renamed Buff Bagwell, he stood out a lot more with his goatee, silly top hat, and proclamation that he was not only buff, but he also had the stuff. By the time WCW came to an end, he was arguably one of their top stars and well equipped with an eye-catching character for the upcoming invasion of WWE. I'm sure he did just fine. Number 4, Brian Pillman. Brian Pillman was one of many talented WCW cruiserweights who felt that no matter how many times they produced the goods, weren't going to get a chance to advance up the card. For the former Cincinnati Bengal, getting to the main event was imperative in order to provide for his growing family while in the prime of his career. In order to increase his bargaining power, Pillman created the loose cannon persona, a wildly unpredictable character that seemingly did what he wanted, when he wanted, whether the script called for it or not. Instances of supposedly going into business for himself included him spontaneously grabbing commentator Bobby Heenan, causing the Brain to drop an F-bomb on live TV, naughty naughty, and walking out of a strap match with WCW matchmaker Kevin Taskmaster Sullivan after saying, "I respect you, Booker man." To go along with the new edgy character, the former Hollywood Blonde's appearance became more disheveled and darker. The loose cannon wasn't around WCW for too long, as he successfully negotiated his very real release, ostensibly in order to work for ECW and then come back to WCW at a later date, only to take an improved financial offer from WWE instead. Number 3, Scott Steiner. I must confess that when Scott Steiner showed up with a blonde buzz cut, goatee, new gear and an extra 5 inches on his arms, that I didn't even know it was the same bloke. He'd turned on Brother Rick and said goodbye to being a good guy, instead adopting the appearance and manner of one of his idols, superstar Billy Graham. After toying with the name White Thunder, Steiner settled on Big Poppa Pump and set about establishing himself as a singles star and world title contender. The truth is, the change in look and demeanor is exactly what the genetic freak needed to get to the next level. The mullet and amateur style singlet just weren't going to cut it in the new millennium. As well as altering his appearance and wrestling style, Steiner also changed up his promo and character work, though how much of it was him playing a role and how much of it was him genuinely losing his mind, I don't think anyone really knows. Now a big time heel, Steiner let his hair-trigger temper come to the fore, snapping on not just fans at ringside, but also fellow wrestlers like Ric Flair and Diamond Dallas Page, which only added to his scary aura. Number 2, Sting. From the late 80s through to the mid-90s, Sting was WCW's constant presence and force for good. As the neon-soaked face-painted superhero to match the Hogans and Warriors of WWE, Sting became one of the promotion's biggest and most bankable stars. While others came and left or changed their allegiance from good to bad on a whim, the man with the blonde flat top could always be depended on. Things started to change in 1996, however, subtly at first as Sting began to grow out his hair and let it revert to its natural brown colour. Soon as the NWO ran roughshod over everyone, people began to question his motives and wonder if he would defect to the group. He didn't, but the accusations caused a change in the Stinger and he began wearing black and white, carrying a baseball bat, and hanging about in the rafters. This new character, inspired by Brandon Lee in the film The Crow, was a huge hit and added extra layers and depth to the Sting character. At a time when shades of grey were becoming more common in the genre, he accepted the ambiguity and used the opportunity to not only freshen up his act, but become the most over wrestler in WCW without even having to wrestle. Number 1, Hulk Hogan. WCW's signing of Hulk Hogan was monumental for the company. After all, this was the man partly responsible for one of the biggest boom periods in wrestling history, the former golden goose of WWE, and someone who added much credibility, not to mention the potential for many other lucrative business ventures. Anyone for pasta? The Hulkster's say your prayers and take your vitamins shtick worked for the first year and a half or so, but by 1996, a vocal section of the fan base was noticeably sick of it. The audience was changing, and Hogan realized that if he wanted to remain on top, that he needed to change too. And so he accepted the creative decision to make him the mystery third man, aligning with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash to form the New World Order. As Hollywood Hogan, Terrible Terry assured his position at the top of the card as he played a villain for the first time in forever. Switching the red and yellow for the black and white was frankly a genius and timely move and transformed a performer in danger of being left in the past into the hottest thing in the industry.